Welcome to the Take the North podcast. I am David Haugh from 6-7 The Score's Mully and Haugh show, joined today by special guest Gabe Ramirez, jack of all trades. You know him from B96, you know him from The Score, you know him from Fox 32, you know him from everywhere because he is
Chicago Fire.
The Chicago Fire. Yes, I was getting to that, but it's a long list, Gabe, of stuff that you are involved in and faces that people people know you everywhere. They recognize you, but thanks for being here. We're going to talk Bears today, okay?
Yeah, now they're going to know me for being on Take the North podcast, so this is going to be great. It's going to be great.
You can get the Take the North podcast on your free Odyssey app. You can watch us on 6-7 The Score's YouTube page. Dan Weeder will be back next week. We're going to do some more talking because the countdown to training camp is on. Gabe, it's hard to believe. We're going to touch on a lot of different things today, but as we sit here on this June 19th, it's a month away exactly from the Bears reporting to training camp. It seems absurd that the offseason is that short. We know that Caleb Williams is in France. He's traveling. He's shopping with Chanel. But it's 30 days. Football is here. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's unbelievable to think that it's that close, right? To actually be able to see Caleb Williams in the number 18 jersey representing for the Chicago Bears on a national level. It's one thing to talk about it for months on end, but to actually have it be 6 weeks away, at this point, August 1st being that Hall of Fame game, it's exciting. I mean, I was on Fox 32 Sports Zone on this past Sunday with Cassie Carlson, and she asked me, Gabe, what do you want Caleb to do between now and, the start of camp? And I said, it'd be interesting if he opened up his phone book or maybe his network and just talked to some people that have been there before. Right. To me, that's what I thought would be important for him. Like you already did it. You did everything. You're as athletic as you're going to be. You got the book, you got it all. You're there. But like week one's going to be different than anything else you've ever felt in your life. And so for me, it's about being able to absorb more information from some of the quarterbacks that are out there that maybe you might be able to get a hold of to talk to.
This is why I wanted to have you on, and this is why I like when we're able to host together. I think that you bring a blend of the fan enthusiasm because you grew up a Bears fan and you don't hide that. You're very open about the fact that you want the Bears to win, and you're a Chicago kid and you grew up into a Bears fan, and that's great. And everybody appreciates that transparency and that enthusiasm. I also think you walk the line pretty well because you're an analyst and you do critique and you criticize or you praise, but you are objective when you need to be. And so kind of in that vein, when you're looking ahead to this season, I don't remember. I think this is similar to what 2019 felt like. It certainly to me feels like 2007 because you go back coming off the Super Bowl. From your perspective, a guy who's always been a Bears fan all his life, because I've only been here 20 years. And, I'm Chicagoan, transplanted from South Bend. I'm a Hoosier, right? But you're Chicago Gabe. How are you approaching this Bears season?
Yeah, it's cautiously optimistic, David. When you're looking at, I think the cool thing that we've been able to see, if you're really assessing the Bears properly over the last few seasons, is that your fandom can get you ahead of yourself. And what we have seen, which what is true, is that, what does growth actually look like? Well, when you're going from 4 wins to 7 wins, that's what growth looks like. And then if you're looking for what the next level of that should be, to me, it's in that 9-win range, right? At 9 wins, to me, is growth. Right, you've added talent to the roster, you've revamped the offense, and so it'd be foolish and naive to say 11, 12 wins. That's what the fans probably are saying, right? That we see that even my family, that's what they're talking about. But I think realistically, where I'm at, I want growth, and what do I want growth to look like? 2 wins. I think if Caleb Williams has been tabbed to be as good, at the very minimum, as good as Justin Fields, then you should be able to duplicate the 7-9 record that the Bears had last year. I don't expect you to then be some outlier like I'm just like CJ Stroud last year.
The Texans, right?
Yeah, the Texans, where you come in and you have this crazy year and you propel your team to the playoff berth and such. I don't have those on there because I don't want to be disappointed. Because I do still understand that it's a rookie. I do still understand that it's the NFL. I do still understand that the opposite side of the ball are some of the best athletes in the entire world. So I think that's where the analyst comes in to try to curb the enthusiasm. So to me, David, it's 9 wins. That's where I'm at. 9 wins. Get me there. Anything less than that, though, I'm pissed. right? Anything less than 9 wins, I'm pissed. And if you put anything on top of that, then I'm extremely excited like a fan would be.
See, I think that's rational because of the way the offseason has been has gone for the Bears. Winning more games than you lose is kind of the bar where it has to be set. 9-8 would be acceptable for a rookie quarterback. It doesn't have to necessarily be C.J. Stroud and the Texans part 2. He doesn't have to go to be the the playoffs necessarily. Although that is possible, and I think it's conceivable. But I just don't know if it has to be a playoff or else type of mentality, because then you get into trouble and then you invite criticism because the pressure and expectations create the pressure. And I think trying to just expect the Bears to win more than they lose is a reasonable quest and goal to have.
Yeah, and I think when you're looking at, David, also how you won those games and how you lost those games, right? That's really going to dictate what the end of the season looks like, because you could be 9-8, and if there's some close ones, you feel like you could turn the tide the next year, then you're going to feel good about the season. But I think, like you said, it invites criticism, which is exactly the point that Ryan Poles is at right now, where he's trying to figure out, hey, what does my team look like? All right, you're here. You put those pieces together. Now it's up for debate, how good this team can be, and that's what you're going to be able to have to fix. But yeah, ultimately, that is where it's at. Finding out what you have, and hoping that those losses aren't terrible losses, ones that you regret, or ones that are on the coaching staff, or ones that are on the arm of Caleb Williams, and they're not 9-8 because their defense is better and they do have weapons. But it's interesting because 9-8 could look a lot of different ways, right?
Well, it could, and they could have a losing record, and still Caleb Williams could have an above average year, and he could have a mediocre year, and they could win 10 games on the strength of that defense and the running game. They could go a lot of different ways, but there's so much focus on the quarterback. So let's talk about him for a second. So I think you'd appreciate this. So yesterday, I was on Football Night in Chicago with your guy Clay Harbor, and we were talking about expectations for Caleb Williams, and I said, true or false, Clay, 3,500 yards, 25 touchdowns. And we were both kind of like, well, that's not crazy when you're talking about what you have in this quarterback that everyone's been raving about, including us going in. So we do the segment, Gabe, and we're taping the segment. I walk into the green room, and Frank Thomas is there waiting to do the White Sox pregame, and he's watching everything on the monitor. And Frank Thomas, who knows a little something about Chicago sports and being in the spotlight and what that can do to an athlete, no matter how gifted you may be, he says to me, stop it. He's like, don't put so much pressure on the kid. He's still going to be a kid. Remember that. Don't put so much pressure. Relax. And I'm like, Frank, but he's this, but he's that. And Frank's like, okay, he is. And he's gifted. And I'm not saying anything about his ability, but just remember how much pressure can play a part in any performance. And I thought it was a good point to remember, Gabe, because, Caleb Williams has made it look easy since he's arrived. In practice, at press conferences, there's that easy confidence we often refer to. Doesn't mean it is. It's still pretty difficult, and I think we need to keep that in mind.
Yeah, and there hasn't been opportunity for criticism for Caleb Williams, and to watch him respond when that criticism comes in the form of Chicago media. We saw what happened to Justin Fields and how he responded. I believe we had to see that with Caleb Williams. So that'll be interesting to see with that squad. But you're right. I mean, I think he himself is in a position to, take over the team, David. I mean, you talk about him being in Paris, you talk about him being a larger than life personality. And I think it's true. I think he can come, and he can. I also think, like, when you're looking at the stats of the Chicago Bears and where they're at with the record books, right? It's like you can have like a super mediocre season and still be like in the top 5 of Bears history. So I think if we operate under that umbrella where we're like, hey, this is what we really want for you. We want you to just be like above average. You don't need you to be Joe Montana, right? And I think that's right. But to your initial point, I think back, Kevin Garnett just said it on his podcast, David, where he's like, it's one thing to, play basketball on a court. He's like, but when you get out there for the first time and you see those people, and the one line that really struck me was, and then you have to be embarrassed in front of them. That one was a good one because, you often think about the bright lights and the flashing cameras, but no one talks about the embarrassment or the potential embarrassment. Not even the embarrassment, the potential embarrassment that exists. You miss that 3-pointer. A guy gets by you. He dunks on you. Anything of the sort. And the same thing holds true for a guy like Caleb Williams, right? Where you get out there for that first time, just like Kevin Garnett's talking about. It's one thing to be throwing pro day workouts and maybe, but NFL, bright lights, Sunday Night Football, game 2 against CJ Stroud, at Houston. That's a big difference when you're trying not to F up, as opposed to any other situation.
So how do you expect him to handle the hype? Everything we have seen so far is that this guy is prepared for this moment because he's coming to Chicago already a star. This is a guy that was on his way to a business meeting in LA, in West Hollywood, when he found out that Justin Fields had been traded, and he had to interrupt his meeting, probably with Jay-Z or somebody, just to find out that, he's going to be the number 1 pick and he's going to be the number 1 guy. I don't think much phases him, Gabe, but as we just described, it's impossible to ignore, and there's going to be enormous pressure. And who knows? This is Chicago. They booed the Cubs the other night. The lovable losers. They booed Hector Neris. Not that doesn't mean that, you've been to Soldier Field when things get bad. The first 3 and out, the second 3 and out, maybe who knows? Caleb Williams could get booed this year. How do you think he'll handle some of the kind of idiosyncrasies of Chicago sports fandom?
You mentioned that he's been under the spotlight for quite some time. He's handled pressure even after his Heisman season at USC, and he got crushed in the media right after his Heisman season, not performing better, not winning more games. Oh, the Notre Dame game, right? I mean, he's felt that. Obviously, it's going to look a little different in Chicago, but I think Caleb Williams strikes me as the guy who, like, when I go play basketball, if there's a bunch of guys my age, then I feel like I'm okay, right? Like, I feel like I'm okay. If I'm around some younger guys, some guys like studs, right? Some guys that can run around the court and just hustle me, then I feel bad, right? And I feel like Caleb Williams, right? I feel like Caleb Williams is the guy who feels confident in his skills in a peer group. Like, he's like, yeah. Even amongst the good guys, like, I'm still good. So even if he has a bad day, a bad half, a bad game where they boo him, I think ultimately in his mind, he truly believes, like, yeah, I had a bad game, but over the course of a season, over the course of a career, I'm going to be better than the average. And I think that's what he holds on to. I think that's where that confidence comes from, because he truly has it at every moment when you watch him, like you said, whether it's a podium, whether it's in practice, whether it's in an interview. I mean, he really is that confident gentleman. So it'll be interesting to see, but I think he'll handle it well.
Who do you think leads the Bears in receiving yards this year and touchdowns?
All right, let's go with receiving yards first. I'm going to say Rome Odunze, because he's going to have the benefit of playing in the slot, where the safety more often than not is probably going to have to cover over the top DJ Moore or Keenan Allen, whether he's lined up on a terrible nickel or some linebacker on a terrible 3-4 defense. Like, he's going to be the beneficiary of that. So I could see him having a lot of yak, Rome Odunze, if he stays healthy. Touchdowns, I think it's going to be Keenan Allen.
Do you? I think DJ Moore.
DJ Moore, because he'd probably stay healthier longer.
Yeah.
But Keenan Allen, I think Keenan Allen is the only one that has the cojones to go into Caleb Williams' ear and be like, hey, young blood, when we're within the 8-yard line, that ball comes to me first. And when you think you want to check it down, don't. Like, he's the only one that would do that.
Right.
And so I think that a couple touchdowns will come just off of that. And so I think he'll have his fair share. But I think DJ, why do you think it's going to be DJ Moore?
Well, I think DJ Moore is more explosive, and when times may the short pass will turn into big plays, because maybe something that's how you get a young quarterback in rhythm, by the short passing game. And I think he's more likely to get yards after the catch. I think Odunze would be the second to that. Now, Keenan Allen, I have a ton of respect for what he has accomplished. I just do wonder, I don't even want to say this out loud necessarily, but like 30-something wide receivers sometimes fall off the cliff fast. And I just wonder if the expectation level for him, based on what he's accomplished, he's never played outside of California before. I hope that he continues the kind of success and production that he's been providing as a Charger. But of the 3 receivers that the Bears will line up on a regular basis, he's probably the one I expect the least out of next year.
Yeah, I think when you're looking at Caleb Williams and his style of play at USC over the last couple of years, he is a quarterback that benefits from a wide receiver that can improvise with him. And I think that where DJ Moore, you're banking on him being wide open. And like you mentioned, having space and being able to run after that. And Rome Odunze, he can go up and get it. But again, someone that can be a speedster. I think Keenan Allen will be Caleb Williams' failsafe. I think when he is trying to improvise and get away from a defender, he's going to know, at least I can throw it up to Keenan Allen and get it. And I think he'll be the beneficiary of that. So I think that's where a lot of his success is going to come from. And yeah, him being healthy, I think that'll play into that as well. Yeah. It'll be interesting to see. I mean, hold on. Let me ask you a question, David. How many Bears wide receivers are going to have 1,000 yards, if any?
I think DJ Moore will have 1,000 yards. Okay. I think he'll have 1,200 yards again. I think that Rome Odunze will have 900 yards, and I think that Keenan Allen will come in at probably about 865.
Oh my God, that'll be beautiful.
And all three of them will have more than 90 targets because Shane Waldron has had experience in Seattle. Look at those guys last year: DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, and Jackson Smith and Jigba. All three of those guys had 93 or more targets. All three of those guys were happy. They felt like they were fed every Sunday. And I think that's important. Now, maybe DK Metcalf had his moments, but there's always going to be a little diva tendency with some wide receivers. I don't know if the Bears receivers have that tendency, but I would think our guy, DJ Moore, at the top, about 1,200 yards. Then you go with Rome and then Keenan Allen.
That'd be crazy. I would love that, first of all. I mean, having that many yards. DeAndre Swift probably would 500 out the back.
He's a good pass catcher. I mean, he was known in Detroit for the way that he was a route runner as a running back. So I think he's a guy that is very versatile. And then, we haven't even talked about the tight ends. The tight ends, they got two tight ends and basically a glorified offensive tackle in Mercedes Lewis at 40 years old, still blocking, still got that hand in the dirt. But I think the tight ends are still going to be a force in this offense, especially in the red zone.
Of course, Cole Kmet. I think he's going to be the beneficiary of Gerald Everett being on the opposite side. I think, defense is not just saying, "Oh, we only got to worry about Kmet because the other tight end is going to be blocking." Get some two tight end set that where the opposite tight end is actually a threat, as opposed to last year where it was just a variation of a formation that they were in.
So you can remember the Rex Grossman draft when he was a first rounder coming in as the new guy. You remember the hope surrounding Orton and the way that he, was kind of the guy, the consummate teammate. You lived through Cutler and then Mitch and Justin Fields. So what does this remind you of? When's the last time you felt like this season was going to be as much fun as you think this season would be? From a fan perspective, from an anticipation standpoint, when was the last time you felt this jacked about the season?
To answer that question, you'd have to go back to the personality of each quarterback that you just mentioned, Dave. And they all were the exact same, where they had no playful ownership of the team. There were guys out to just prove something. And I feel like Caleb Williams is the exact opposite. He doesn't have this pressure to prove. At least the way he operates is what I'm saying. When you're asking me how much fun or what this fun feels like, you see Caleb and you're like, man, here's a guy who he believes it. He believes it. I believe it too. I'm not. Whereas every quarterback you mentioned, right? Like Rex Grossman, number 8 pick, but we want him to be great, right? Jay Cutler, he was good, but now he's going to be even better. Here, this is the missing piece. Right, but we want them. We always want them to be better than they are. Right, Kyle Orton. Oh my gosh, this guy. Let him be the starter. Right, like Justin Fields. Oh, we finally did it. We finally got ourselves the motor, and we want. We always want. I think Caleb Williams comes in. And he's like, no, guys, don't worry about it. I'm already here, and it feels fun to have that mentality from your quarterback. Like, no, I am that guy. I am him. Don't worry about it, everybody. Where everybody else is trying to prove that they are him or trying to add to a team to make it better. So that's the fun part about it, because the personality of the team is much different with Caleb Williams as the quarterback. Don't you agree?
Caleb Williams gives the Bears a swagger they just haven't had. And I think that you're not used to that happening with the offensive side of the ball. You're used to that happening on the other side of the ball. So let's talk about the defense. We can't get out of here without at least addressing that, Gabe, because I think a lot of the reason that any of these projections are even legit are because the Bears found a way to put together what could be a top 10 defense. It started last year accidentally. Allen Williams resigned under very odd circumstances. Matt Eberflus took over, and this defense flourished. They got Montez Sweat. They locked up Jalen Johnson. They have Javon Dexter progressing at a good rate inside. They got Tremaine Edmonds. All the key spots are filled. The secondary is elite. I think Byard's going to be better than Eddie Jackson. How good can this defense be? We say top 10 all the time. What needs to happen for that to be a reality?
Yeah, health. I mean, I think that is because I think when you're looking at this Bears team and how it's been constructed over time in the last couple of years, first it was revamping the roster, then it was adding talent, right? Then it was completing the talent. And now the last phase is adding depth. And I think the Bears, that's where they're at. They have the talent at every position. Now they have to create depth, people that can't step up because it is the NFL. Guys are going to get hurt, and you're going to need people to step up. So I think it's based on health. And then, I mean, Montez Sweat obviously is a key component, but, you know, what kind of productivity are you going to get from the opposite end position, right? I mean, you know, DeMarcus Walker's there. That's great. You know, is it going to be Ngakoue? Are you going to go and get Emmanuel Ogbah from the Miami Dolphins, a guy who can play interior and exterior and help out the line as a whole? You know, what are you going to do? So I think the productivity on the other side obviously depends. We all know that. The continued maturation of Javon Dexter and also Zach Pickens, let's not forget he was there as well. And they're expecting big things from him also. And so, again, that goes back to the depth component. So health, depth, those are the two things that if they remain true, or if guys do step up, whether it's, you know, rookies or people that have been brought in after camp cuts, then that could propel that team maybe even into the top 5. Because let's not forget, if Caleb Williams is going on, you know, 60-yard drives or 70-yard drives and keeping the offense off the field, that's going to help the defense as well, and that's a key component for that team.
Jeffrey Chadia from NFL Network, I believe, put out a list of the teams that improved the most in the offseason. The Bears were number 1. In his mind, and he's a veteran, respected NFL observer and writer and reporter, the Bears improved more than any other team in the National Football League. Now, they had maybe the most room to grow, or as much as anybody. 7-10 isn't a playoff team. They could have probably been 10-7 with a few breaks here or there. But, Gabe, when you look at all they have done, it's easy to praise them. It's easy to be excited. What didn't they do that you thought they might have, or what was left undone that you think might be an issue going into the season?
It's a great question. And I want to start by talking about the piece that people aren't talking about when they talk about approved team, and it's the coordinators, right? Shane Waldron, defensive coordinator for the Bears, getting 2 brand new ones in there. I think that helps the team a lot. When you're looking at the piece that I feel like they didn't touch on the most, that's a great. I mean, I would have liked the veteran offensive lineman.
Yeah.
But like a not Brian Bates. I'm talking about like a veteran, like
Anchor.
This guy is good. Yeah.
Yes.
To me.
You're Trent Williams type, the guy that's just like, you not have to worry about, like, you're going to have to pay him, but that's it. You just have, it's only going to be a headache on payday. That's it.
Yeah, that would have been good for me, because then it would have made you feel a little bit better about the offensive line. You feel good because you felt last year there was some continuity that was forming, but ultimately you're like, I would have liked to have added to that, not just like a swing guy, but like an actual dog, you know?
Yeah,
that's where your head's at? Where else is your head at?
I think that's that offensive line. You hear all the time the end opposite Montez Sweat, the edge rusher, which is still it's important. But I would feel a lot better about a lot of things if they had more certainty on the offensive line. I just don't know about that, because that could derail all of these hopes, and it could get in the way of a progress of a young quarterback. So I do worry about the offensive line, probably more than any other position, frankly.
Yeah, and you want them to continue to grow. You want guys like Tevin Jenkins to, you know, fulfill the duty to himself to try to prove he deserves whatever contract he's putting on the table for the Bears right now. Nate Davis, obviously I know a lot of people are coming down on him, but hey, well, if he's playing well, I'm sure. So let's just get him out there and let's support him so that he can be on the field. And, you know, I think continue to grow from the rookies and the younger guys, Braxton Jones and Darnell Wright. And I think, you know, it'll be all right. But again, I think another piece would have been great. But I wonder what, you know, Caleb, how does he feel? But I'm not worried, Dave. I got to be honest. Now that you say that, I'm like, I have supreme confidence in Shane Waldron to be like, okay, our offensive line sucks. Let me come up with a different game plan instead of our offensive line sucks, and let me go 5 wide and put Caleb Williams on an island.
It's that kind of confidence that's easy to find this offseason for the Bears. All right, last thing, Gabe.
Yep.
You're at Fire games. You're the face of the Fire. You're involved with every aspect of the operation. You have a familiarity with Soldier Field. As a Chicagoan, as somebody that grew up here and values the lakefront experience, we know what Kevin Warren thinks about the Bears building on the lakefront. We know they own the land in Arlington Heights. Just from your perspective, what you talked to a lot of people in a lot of different walks of life, how would you summarize where the Bears are with the stadium project and where you think they should head?
I think the Bears are 100% full-fledged trying to put something on the lakefront. I think that they, explored whatever was going on in Arlington Heights, but ultimately where they want to be, most certainly, is on the lakefront at a different property, right? And I think that Chicago is tough, man. It's tough. And I think whether you're trying to live and survive in the city or you're trying to develop something, right? Because we as Chicagoans, we don't want you telling us anything, right? We don't tell me what to do, right? And I think that even holds true for the public offices and public spaces where, the friends of the park come in and they're like, no, you're not just going to tell us, George Lucas, that you're going to put a museum right here. We're going to tell you that you can't do, it's just like what Chicago is. So should they be further along? No, because there's so much red tape in Chicago, and you got to talk to every single person, and you got to shake everybody's hand and make sure everybody feels okay with doing this. Because if one or two or three components aren't in alignment, it's Chicago. Even though you might think they're small little clogs, they could derail an entire plan. And I think the Bears understand that, and they're doing they're taking the proper measures to make sure everybody is in alignment with what they see as beneficial to the city of Chicago on that lakefront. And I think it is. And I think to ultimately get there, it's just going to take a long time because it's Chicago. It's not, and I don't mean to take shots at anybody, right? But this isn't Columbus, Ohio. This isn't, somewhere where there's a bunch of land or people are like, yeah, bring that here. Let's do that. It's Chicago. It's established. So you have to kind of, play the game properly if you want what you want.
If the Bears are able to put together a team to play in the Super Bowl in the next 5 to 7 years, if they're able to put together a plan together where they can build a stadium which will host a Super Bowl in the next 5 to 7 years, where will that Super Bowl be played?
Oh man, Chicago, hopefully, right? That's the hope. The new stadium.
South Lot. Okay.
Yeah, hopefully.
A lot of red tape, a lot of ground to cover, but it's fun to consider. He's Gabe Ramirez. He's everywhere. Chicago Fire games, B96, The Score, all over your radio, and on X/Twitter at Chicago_Gabe. Contact him, follow him. It's fun. He's also a Bears expert, longtime Bears fan, and now analyst, Fox 32 this season, and you'll hear him wherever you want to get your Bears information. Thanks, Gabe, for joining us today.
Thanks, Dave. Always a pleasure, David. Always a pleasure. Love being out with you.
And thank you for listening to the Take the North podcast. You can find us on your free Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcasts, and you can watch us on 670 The Score's YouTube page. We'll be back next week with another episode of Take the North. Thanks for listening.